Welcome to This Spoils on Octagon. It's a simple video tutorial to show you how to use Octagon to be able to play an easy game of The Spoils. So, once you've all set up, you found an opponent, your lobby's opened, first thing you want to do is actually load a deck. So, in this case, I'll be loading a pre-made deck from the list. Once you install Octagon with the spoils, all those decks will be available to you. It's basically all the precons that have been put out by the spoils. So you have the seed precons, the deck from the BBOAs, which are the ones labeled new player starters, and even like the first two-player starter box set that was originally put out for first edition. So it's quite interesting to see the progression there. But anyways, for this demo, I'll be using the BBOA decks because they're actually like fairly balanced. So if you want to learn how to play the spoils, I recommend to be using those decks. They're very good decks to start with. So, as you may have noticed, when you load a deck in with the spoils game on Octagon, few things happen automatically. First thing that happens is your faction card and your starting resources are put into play automatically, but your starting resources are still actually hidden. Then your deck is automatically shuffled, and you actually roll a 20-sided dice automatically to know who started. In this case, the instance you're looking at actually lost the roll, so my opponent is actually has to choose which one's going to be playing first. For the exercise today, I'll be choosing the instance you're actually seeing, and I'll be the first player. So, since I'm the first player, before we get to drawing a hand and everything, there's one important part about starting resources that happens in the deck editor. So, if you were to build your own deck, at some point most of the players will, it's very important when you make your own deck in the deck editor that you put the starting resources and faction at the right spot, because if you don't, the game definition will most likely bug and you won't be able to do some of the commands you would need them to do. So basically all your cards in the deck that you want in your deck goes in the game deck section, except for the starting resources and the faction card that actually happens to be in the second section named faction. So if you do put your faction and starting resources in this box here, what's going to happen is exactly what happened earlier, and all the cards will be loaded automatically, and then it'll be easy for you to start playing. So let's draw a hand. So on this hand I'll play 8 cards, and we'll draw 9 cards on the other side. Oops. Wrong key. There you go. So to be able to mulligan with Octagon is fairly simple. Let's say with this hand, as you may notice, if you hover on a card, there's going to be a zoom out on either side of the which is available. So it's always easy to be able to read your card, even though they're small in your hand. You can actually have a zoom in and read your card easily. So, to mulligan a card, what you do is you grab the card, click on it, then drag it to your deck. But you don't want to be letting go just when you're above the deck, because what's going to happen is going to end up on top of your deck. What you want to do is you bring your cursor all the way when you're hovering about the down arrow at the bottom of the deck, and then you let it go. If you want to verify if your card is at the bottom or at the top of your deck, just read in the chat. It'll tell you. Here it says, and this usage was moved to the bottom of my deck, which is great. That's what I wanted. So all I can do is keep going. Put cards at the bottom of my deck, all the cards I don't need, and then you simply draw back again for the cards you missed. So in this case, 4 cards. I'll draw 4 more cards. There we are. Okay, so that's it for the mulligan. Throughout the game, you can actually announce your start of turn trigger with the help of the function 3 and function 4 key. So F3 would be the restore option. Just a sec here. I guess I was on the wrong end. So F3 would be the restore option. Okay, in this case you haven't seen any of the cards move, but if I had depleted cards or attached cards to my faction, all the cards would have come back to their original position. Okay, F4 will announce your develop rule. So in this case, if you want to play a resource directly, like face up, all you have to do is to double click your resource and it'll play automatically face up and it'll go join all the other resources. If, on the contrary, you want to play a card face down as a resource, all you have to do is you hover your cursor over a card and you hit F9 and it'll automatically become a face down resource. You can also use hold the Alt key and left click on a card and it'll play a face down as well. Okay, so that's for playing resources. In order to attach resources to your faction when you want to play a card, all you have to do is either you do them separately by double clicking on them, like so, or you can do them as a whole by, as I shown you in the other video, you draw a card and you highlight the ones you want to use. In this case, let's say I want 2 resources, so I highlight 2 resources and then I double click on them and it'll both attach to the faction. So in this case, I guess I can actually play a forecast card, so I'll go ahead and double click on the card I want to play, like so. Every time I play a card, it'll actually appear in the middle of the play area, which means that it's in the being played area of the game. It's actually not quite on the board yet. It's actually allowing my opponent to respond. This is probably the most complicated automation of this game definition. It's not really hard, but it requires constant attention from the players. Every time you play a card or every time you play an ability, the opponent has to answer if he wants to respond or not. The answers are done with the F1 and F2 keys. F1 is for no response, which will progress the game along, or F2 is to say response, and then you just go ahead and play your response. So in this case, my opponent has no response. He wants to let me play the actual card, so he's going to hit F1, which then gonna resolve the card and put it into play on my side of things. Okay, so it's really important. Every time there's a card played or an ability played, the opponent has to answer either with F1 for no response or F2 for response. Okay, let's say that like instead of a contriving engineer, I had actually a card that had an ability and I wanted to place that ability. What I do in this case is I hold the tab key and I click the card, in which case, as you've seen, the ability is put in the middle in the being played area of the game. So once again, in order for the game to progress, my opponent has to answer either F1 for no response or F2 for response. In this case, my opponent has no response at F1. Okay, so when it comes to the end of turn, to allow for your opponent to play on your end of turn before he gets to his turn, you must end the turn with the F5 key. So if you press F5, if you look in the chat box, it'll say, now Pink Lizard enters his end step. So I'm waiting for a response from the other player. So at this point, if let's say my opponent had Karmic Cake and wanted to play it, it's a tactic that costs 2 to play. You could play it on my end turn before to take his turn. So in this case, you would simply attach 2 of his resources and then play the card, and then I would have to answer. Okay, if he doesn't wish to play a card and simply wants to take his turn, doesn't want to add anything to the end of my turn, so when I say it's the end of my turn, all he has to do is to again answer with the same answer question F1 for no response. By pressing F1 for no response, automatically it becomes his turn. Then it's his turn to do restore, and then develop, and then he's gonna end this turn, and then it's up to me. Like if I wanted to play, let's say, a tactic for one or an ability for one, I have a chance here. If I don't have anything to move the game along, once again I press F1. Oh yeah, you might have noticed, if for some reason there's no questions or no answers that are awaiting in the game chat, the keys, the F1 and F2 keys, are also used to communicate with your other players. If there's no answer or a card in the middle here, in the middle of the play, either being played or an ability being played, if you hit F1, it'll say continue, meaning you're ready to continue after an action. You understand what the other player said or did, and like you don't need any more explanation. Or you can always halt the game and say, look, I know I'm taking my time, but I'm thinking. I need to to see what I'm gonna do about this. So if you do a F2, like it'll just say, hey, look, give me a second here. I'm thinking. It's not because I'm dead in front of the computer or anything. It's very handy, like in some aspect of the game. Okay, so since it's the beginning of my turn, once again, I'll hit the F3 key to restore all my cards, and then F4 I'll mark for my develop, and I'll develop, I'll draw a card for this turn. Here you go, I'll draw a card. Okay, so a little bit of in-game keys. So I have a character and I want to attack, so all I have to do is hover your cursor over the card and you do Control A, so that'll allow you to attack. Also, in reverse, if I were to be attacked by someone and I wanted to block, it's the same thing. All you have to do is hover over your character and then you do Control B and then you'll block. You may have noticed, if you do Control A, the character will deplete automatically. But since when you're blocking, the depleting happens only after combat, it won't deplete automatically. Once all the combat steps have been resolved, then you can manually deplete him if he's still in play, of course. One of the things that will happen often time enough, some of the road cards will ask you to flip a coin. If you flip a coin, all you have to do is to hover over the table, not over a card, but specifically over the table, and do a Control F. Then the result will be printed in the chat box. I'm saying this not over a card because if you're actually over a card, what's going to happen, and you do a Control F, is actually you're going to be flipping the card over, like if you wanted to flip it as a resource, like so. So it's very careful. If you want to flip a coin, you put your cursor on the table and Control F. If you want to flip a card, you hover over the card and then you just Control F and it'll flip it. See, if it's in the resource position, what's going to happen is the card will be played like so in the middle, and then your opponent may have an answer. If he doesn't have an answer, it'll just come into play on your side. In reverse, if you have a card in play and for some reason you're asked to flip it down, all you have to do again is Control F and it'll flip down to a resource position. In the same vein, if you remember when you actually could use an ability by holding Tab and clicking a card to mark that you wanted to use, let's say, this Stuttershy ability, well, you can do the same with cards that are face down. All you have to do is, once again, you hold Tab and you click a card. It'll actually reveal the card to your opponent so you can read it, and then it'll put the ability in the being played area of the game, just as if you were an ability from a face, like a face-up card. And the same thing applies, your opponent still have to answer. You may have noticed there's a tiny little eye logo on top of those certain cards that are face down. It means that if you put your cursor on the eye, you can actually see what the card face down is. Since I revealed this card, I no longer can peek at it, so you can easily remedy to that by doing a Control P on the card, and then the I will reappear, and you'll then be able to peek at it just like any other face down card. If you wish to reveal a card to your opponent but not play it, a certain card ask that from you, like explosive implosion or fired hand or cards like that just requires you to show the card. All you have to do, instead of doing a Control F, which would flip the card, all you have to do is an Alt F, which actually will just simply reveal the card without actually playing it. And to reveal it back, same thing, you just Alt F back and it'll be hidden again. So in the game of the spoils, there's a lot of tokens, either micromajig tokens or tokens on cards. So I'm going to go through some of the commands here for tokens. Let's say that you want to create one single micromajig. Simple, you do Alt M. It'll create one single majig. If on the other hand you want to create a bunch of majig, what you can do instead of creating like a bunch one after the other, you can do Control M while hovering on the table, not on a card, on the table. You do Control M, and then you'll have a selection of majig, and you can write a quantity. I want 12 of them, and then you do create, and then it'll create 12 majigs, just like that. What happens if you do Control M, but you don't do it on the table, you do it on a card instead? Well, it'll be the other option to create particular tokens on the card. So you have a choice of pre-made tokens. Those tokens here are created for marking like results for flipping a coin. Let's say that like you have Ioani out and you want always heads when you flip a coin. Well, you can just put one of those tokens on it, and like everybody knows, like you won't have to say it in the chat always. You'll just like know what they are because there's a token on it. This token is useful for cards like Erotic Assassin, for example, that don't restore at the start with the restore rule. So basically any card with that token on it, when you hit F3, it won't restore. Like you'll have to manually restore it. Those are damage markers for location. So when you have enough token on it, well, you can destroy the location and whatnot, and those are just a regular card token. When a card is asked for a token, that's what we can use. You can also create a custom marker with like specific name. Let's say that like a card has to you have to remember the name of a certain card that are in relation. Let's say my predatory lamp, you want to remember which covert character it actually removed covert from. You can just like create a custom marker by selecting a color, and then you write the name of the marker. Let's say non-covert, or let's say I'll write non-covert like that. Okay, and all you have to do is create. So it won't be written on the card, but if you hover over the one, it'll actually tell you what kind of marker it is. So in this case, it's non-covert marker. And if you want to remove a token from a card, you simply grab the token and drag it off the card, and it'll be removed. Certain of the pre-made tokens are actually have hotkeys to facilitate their use. So if you want to add a token to a card, just a regular simple token, you can do Control 1, it'll add one token. If you do Control 2, it'll remove the token. So you can add as many as you want or remove as many as you want. If you have a location to which you want to add damage, same thing, you're going to be using Control 3. So for each damage you want to add, you do Control 3, and if you want to remove damage, you just do Control 4 or simply drag them off. If let's say that Stuttershy for all of a sudden couldn't restore because of some bling or whatnot, all you have to do is Control 5 and it'll have like the marker for non-restore. And then if I hit F3, just like so, see, all my cards will be restored except for this one. It's very useful. Okay, let's say that you wanted to move a card from play to other section of the game. So let's say I want to put this alpha prime to my hand. All I have to do is you do Control H and the card goes to the hand. If you do Control X, it'll be removed from the game entirely, and it'll go in the remove from the game area that's right here. If you do Control Z, you'll actually put the card right underneath your deck. It'll be at the bottom. No, sorry. Control Z is actually the top of the deck, because it's also possible to put like cards at the bottom of each pile by using, like, instead of just doing Control and H, X or Z, all you have to do is Control Alt and the same thing. So if you do Control Alt and Z, it'll be the bottom of the deck, and if you do Control Alt and X, it'll be the bottom of the remove from the game pile. If you're looking to destroy a card from play and put it in your discard, all you do is do delete, and it'll be directly put in your discard. Discard actually will work here. Also throughout the game, let me see here, if you want to look at your deck, all you have to do is right click on your deck. You want to look at all cards. You can also look at just a portion of your cards, so if you want to look at the first 3 cards or the bottom 1 card or whatnot, it's possible. All you have to do is the same thing, right click on the deck, you do look at, and then you select all card or top 3 cards or bottom 3 cards or whatnot. If you're looking at your deck and you want to show your opponent a card because you're searching for a card and you need to reveal it, all you have to do is you take your card and you put it on the board, so it'll both show to your opponent on the table and it'll also show, like, in the chat box which card it is. So then you can close your deck. The reason I took this item out is to show you that you can easily attach items to character. So the first thing you have to do is you target your character by shift clicking it. You've got to make sure that there's only one target, because or else the command won't execute properly. Once you're sure there's only one target and this is where you want it to go, you hover on the item card and you do simply Control Q, and then your card will be attached to it in the corner, like so. Let's say that you want to move the item, or you want to move the item to another character. All you have to do is target the other character, and once again you hover directly on the item and you do Control Q, and then the character will move from one character to the other. In this case, I'll give you an example so you can actually see it. There you go. Once again, if you want to just destroy a card, all you have to do is you hover over the card and you delete the card. One interesting fact is when you have tactics, like so here. Unlike other cards, when you play tactics and your opponent respawn, there's no resolution. The card does not go on your side because it's not an actual card on the board, and the card doesn't go directly to the discard because in certain cases tactics can flip down and become resources. So you have to manually destroy tactics from play once they're resolved. Another thing about the items like that, like as you see, the item is behind my micromajig at the moment. For some reason I wanted to change the order. You can do so by the page up, page down button. So let's say my micromajig is at the top and I want it in the back. All I have to do is page down on the micromajig. It'll flip behind my prototype, and then in reverse, if I want to bring it back, the micromajig back, all I have to do is hover over the micromajig and then you do a page up. It'll be brought back. Other quick information, let's say that I attack with, let's say here. I'll attack with a couple like with a macromajig, and then I want to attack with another one, but I don't want to confuse my opponent by leaving that highlight of attack. To remove all the highlights, all you have to do is to press escape. So, or if you have like several highlights, and oh, you didn't mean to like attack with a third macromajig and you wanted to remove it, all you have to do is like hover over the card and then you escape one more time, and then it'll remove only one highlight. If you're hovering over the table, it'll actually remove all the highlights. Once again, same thing. If you want to attack with several characters, all you have to do is draw a box, say 2, 3, 4, 5 characters, and you do an attack with 5 of those characters, and then the 5 of them will have the highlights, and then just remove it by pressing escape. If you may have noticed, when you play a card, there's a lovely orange highlight around it. That only means that the card was put into play this turn. It's just a reminder. So sometimes with resources, if you don't know if you played a resource this turn or not for you to develop, or with characters and whatnot, you don't remember if it can attack or not. Well, that's just a friendly reminder. It is possible to remove them by pressing escape directly above it, but on the other hand, as soon as you do something else, the highlight will come back. Let's say, if I deplete a character, the highlight will come back to remind you that this card was put into play at this turn. Okay, that's pretty much all I have for you guys. There's a few hotkeys that I didn't speak about because to me they're not that important, but I do encourage you, look through the menus. You'll see there's more to it than what I explained here, but basically with everything I gave you, you should be able to have an easy time playing the spoils on Octagon. I mean, if you have a harder time in the first few games, it's normal. You're not used to the hotkeys yet. Don't lose hope. Just keep at it, and it'll become really easy. Like personally, over time, when I play with players that are like me, very used to the interface, I mean, the games are fairly fast, and the communication is well established. It's easy to see what's going on and to see things that you missed if you did and whatnot. So, wish you a good day, folks, and we'll see you maybe some other day for some other video tutorial. Ciao.